What you're about to embark upon is unlike any other experience you've ever had. We are going to travel throughout history and question every single principle that you have. We do this so we can understand our world. The reason why it's going to be unlike any other experience you've ever had is that I'm going to insist that you question and critically think about all the information that I present to you. Don't believe anything I say unless you can confirm it and that it resonates with something in your soul. If you can do that, you're in the first step of becoming totally free. The reason why I produce this project is to create the intellectual foundation for a new era of humanity. We do not have to live on a society based on debt and death. We can produce a society that is founded upon freedom, where everybody's rights are protected, and that everybody has the ability to rise to their highest and best self. I've spent 6 years putting together all the information that I can to help people understand why we are where we are today, who controls our world, and where it's going to go. I don't claim to be the originator of a lot of the ideas that I present to you. I don't even have all the answers, but I do intend to ask all the questions, because I know the power of the question. When people start questioning their reality, people start becoming free. My unique ability is to be able to bring all this information in a clear narrative where people can understand what is going on in this world. I believe that when people are aware of how the world works, they can prepare for any challenge that we need to face. This project is an all-encompassing educational experience that seeks to tell the greatest truth never told. Throughout all of history, there has always been a small group of men that have ruled over all of humanity for their own personal power and profit. The most amazing aspect to this fact is that it's physically impossible for such a small group of men to control so many people. Once we see how these men work and how they're able to manipulate societies, we see that at the end of the day, the problem does not lie with them, it lies within us. It is only possible if they can control what's inside of here. And that's what this project seeks to do. It seeks to open up your mind so that you stop thinking like they want you to think, and that you start becoming your highest and best self. This educational journey that you're going to be taking in this project will be a dangerous one that if I'm successful, will result in your old self dying. This is necessary for your new, totally free self to be born. This is truly a life-changing experience, and one, if enough people will grasp onto the concepts that I'm going to be teaching, will result into a new era of humanity, so that we don't have to go down the road of fear and tyranny. Once you're aware of how the world really works, you will no longer be played the fool in your relationships, your investments, or even your thoughts. If you notice the most successful people in your life, they're usually not the ones that are the smartest or the hardest working, but they are the people who are in the right place at the right time. Understanding how the world works will allow you to put yourself in the right place at the right time. This project seeks to give you absolute clarity on how the world works and where we are going. That will give you the massive confidence to take massive dramatic action in your own personal life so that you are in the right place at the right time. If I could leave you with one final thought before we continue on, is something that I came up with as I was going through my own awakening and educational experience. And it is, listen to all, follow none, and walk your own path the best that you can. What is the one thing every human being on earth desires? It does not matter if you are black, white, Hispanic, or Asian. It does not matter if you are Christian, Muslim, or Buddhist. It does not matter if you are a man or a woman, old or young, rich or poor, passive or aggressive, Republican or Democrat, American or Iraqi. It is a universal desire throughout human history. It is so strong of a desire that millions have died for it, and it is the greatest cause to fight for. It is the one idea that can unite all of humanity under a common cause. The best thing about this desire is the more we lose it, the stronger the desire becomes. So what is this one common desire that is universally shared by all? It is freedom. Freedom may take many different personal paths, but in the end, we all want to control our own destiny, to live our own lives, to do what we want to do, to love who we want to love, without others interfering. The United States was founded on this simple principle, and it is the last beacon of hope throughout the world. Before the American Revolution, Tyranny ruled the world for 6,000 years, and now that same tyranny is rising up everywhere. The greatest truth never told is that humanity has been consistently enslaved over and over again throughout history, and that we can be free the moment we wish to be free. If the torch of liberty dies in the United States, all of humanity will suffer, as the powerful seek to enslave the weak. Our founding fathers studied every aspect of freedom. If we seek to be free once again, we must also study every aspect of freedom. With freedom as a uniting cause for all of humanity, we can set about rejecting the paradigm that is based on the spreading of debt and death, and that we can create a new paradigm where there is a level playing field for all to rise to their highest and best self. The American Founding Fathers encapsulated this idea under the founding principle of our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When we see that we have this one commonality throughout all of humanity, we must also recognize that we do not have the right to enforce our version of freedom onto someone else. If you truly want and believe in freedom, you must respect others' expressions of freedom. As long as their expression does not infringe upon your life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we should be able to be free to do whatever we want. Things are speeding up. It took thousands of years to go through the agricultural revolution. It took hundreds of years to go through the industrial revolution. It took decades to go through the information revolution. Now we are on the verge of an awareness revolution, where humanity can finally use all the knowledge from all three revolutions to build something that resonates with what we are and what we are meant to be. We are at a unique period in human history where there is a very real chance that all of humanity will be free of the old world tyrannies and learn to respect and protect each other's freedoms. With the mathematically inevitable collapse of the dollar, all of humanity will be freed from consumerism, narcissism, and militarism. Once freed, humanity will have the knowledge, incentive, and the ability to communicate these ideas of freedom as a way forward. There will be no need to follow down the dark path of fear and coercion. Men and women of all races, ages, and creeds from all over the world can rally around the simple idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Believe nothing, no matter where you have read it or who has said it, not even if I have said it, unless it agrees with your own reason and your own common sense. Buddha. What you are about to embark upon is unlike anything else that you've ever experienced. We will set about on a journey that will take us through history and challenge everything that you've ever learned. The reason why this is going to be very different from any other educational experience that you've ever had is that I'm going to insist that you question and critically think about the information I am presenting to you. Do not accept anything I say unless you can confirm it and that it resonates with something in your soul. There, you will begin to become totally free. I do not claim to have all the answers, but I do seek to ask all of the questions. My hope for this project is that it becomes the intellectual foundation for a new era of humanity. We can reject the paradigm that is built on spreading debt and death. We can set about creating a new paradigm where people are free to play on a level playing field for all to rise to their highest and best selves. I have been influenced by many, and I do not claim to be the originator of most of the ideas I present to you. My unique ability is to bring together the big picture for all to see. This project is an all-encompassing educational experience that will tell you the greatest truth never told. The truth is that humanity has been enslaved over and over again throughout history, and that we can be free the moment we wish to be. This journey will be a dangerous one, in which, if I'm successful, will result in your old self dying, so that a new, totally free person can be born. All know the way, but few actually walk it. I have gone through this journey of awakening. I have lived the life of individual opulence, and I have lived the life of collective poverty. I now see the middle path very clearly, and it has led me to my highest and best self. This is, without a doubt, a life-changing experience, and if enough people grasp the concepts that I present, it could lead to a new era of humanity where freedom rings. Once you are aware of how the world really works, you will no longer be played the fool in your relationships, investments, and thoughts. I have seen that those that are most successful in life are not necessarily the smartest or hardest working individuals. For the most part, they were just in the right place at the right time. This project seeks to give you absolute clarity to take massive action in your life to prepare for the greatest paradigm shift in human history, the mathematically inevitable collapse of the dollar. This is not simply an American struggle. This is a struggle for all of humanity. And I want to be absolutely clear. I do not just want to scare you and feed you full of doom and gloom. There is a way out, and I would not bring you on this journey if I had not made it through myself. If I could leave you with one piece of advice before we continue on, it is something I came up with that helped me tremendously throughout my own journey. Listen to all, follow none, walk your own path the best that you can. Once, a long time ago, there was a wise Zen master. People from far and near would seek his counsel and ask for his wisdom. Many would come and ask him to teach them, enlighten them in the way of Zen. He seldom turned any away. One day, a powerful man came to visit the Zen master. "I have come today to ask you to teach me about Zen. Open my mind to enlightenment." The tone of the powerful man's voice was one that was used to getting his own way. The Zen master smiled and said that they should discuss this over a cup of tea. When the tea was served, the master poured his visitor a cup. He poured, and the tea rose up to the rim and began to spill over the table, finally onto the robes of the very powerful man. Finally, the powerful man shouted, "Enough! You are spilling tea all over me. Can't you see the cup is full?" The master stopped pouring and smiled at his guest. "You are like this teacup, so full that nothing more can be added. Come back to me when your cup is empty. Come back to me with an empty mind." A mind that is expanded by a new idea will never go back to its original dimension. Total freedom is a concept I came up with to describe the ultimate outcome of this project. It is the idea that you will be totally free to be your highest and best self, that we come into our destiny by throwing off all of the shackles that we and others put onto us. The best thing about the total freedom concept is that it is totally attainable and no power can stop you. You can become free without confrontation, coercion, or violence. It takes very little energy, and it is something that you can pass on to others, including future generations. Most of us are simply trying to become financially free. The problem I realized early on in life is that you can become financially free and never your highest and best self. I grew up knowing people that had financially everything, and I mean everything, and they were miserable. And yet that is what we're programmed in society to do, to chase after becoming financially free. So many people sacrifice so much for this financial freedom that when and if they get there, they become depressed. I have identified 6 freedoms that one must attain in order to become totally free. The first freedom is physical freedom, the ability to live your life healthy and pain-free. The next freedom is financial freedom, to be debt-free and create generational wealth so that you will have the ability to do what you want to do and to be a blessing unto others. The third, political freedom. This is not just the freedom to vote and have a say in politics, but free from ideas that keep us divided against each other. The next one is intellectual freedom, to question everything and logically process information so that we are free from false choices that limit us. The fifth step is emotional freedom, to be rid of toxic thoughts and people. The final step is spiritual freedom, the ability to connect to a higher power and fulfill our destiny. When we are free in all those areas, we can become our highest and best self. It is only then that we can lift others around us to show them the way. As this sweeps through society, the world is changed. It is very important to see that this path of freedom is one that is inside of us. This is unlike everything we've ever been taught. We cannot change the outside world for us to become free. We must change ourselves so that the world can become free. The 6 freedoms of total freedom mirror that of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a theory in psychology that was proposed by Abraham Maslow in his 1943 paper, A Theory of Human Motivation. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is often portrayed in the shape of a pyramid, with the largest and most fundamental levels of needs at the bottom, and the need for self-actualization at the top. The most basic need is for survival. The body produces real physical reactions if it does not get food, water, air, or sleep. Once the basic needs are met, safety becomes the most important need. The need for personal and financial security becomes most important. Without the physical security from violence or the financial security from economic safety, you cannot become concerned with the next level of human need, which is love and belonging. Once these two basic needs are met, you have a firm foundation to become emotionally involved with others. This can come in the form of friendship, intimacy, and family. With the acceptance of a loving community, a person now has the ability to move on to his next need of self-esteem. This level allows the person to have self-respect or confidence independent of what others think. This also shows in a more narcissistic lower version where a need for constant praise and respect of others. What a man can be, he must. Abraham Maslow. The final step is self-actualization. This is a point where a person can rise to their highest and best self, where they can express their true self and their unique talents and abilities. These 5 needs mirror the 6 stages of total freedom. You need to become physically free in order to become politically and financially free. You must be emotionally free in order to become intellectually free. Once you have that intellectual freedom, then you can then set about connecting with the spiritual freedom to become the highest and best self and find out what you were meant to be. It is very important that we understand that what is true for a single human is also true for human society. If a society does not have food or water, they cannot have a stable political system or a functioning economy. Without the safety of a stable society, interpersonal relationships suffer as people scramble to meet their own physical needs. Without an emotionally healthy society, we cannot produce the intellectual or spiritual thinkers needed to guide and inspire society to its highest levels. So much of what we are going to see later on in this project revolves around social predators keeping humanity at its most basic levels, so that no man or society challenges the power that they have. Through the use of debt upon the domestic populace and the use of war on the rest of the world, the elite keep mankind down, never to challenge them. Let me read you a quote from an article about the United States using debt-free money and how it could bring world peace and eventually bring down the elite of its time. Quote, "If the mischievous financial policy, which has its origin in North America, shall become endurated down to a fixture, then that government will be able to furnish its own money without cost. It will pay off debts and be without debt. It will have all the money necessary to carry out its commerce. It will become prosperous without precedent in the history of the world. The brains and wealth of all the countries will go to North America. That country must be destroyed, or it will destroy every monarchy on the globe." That is from the Times of London, 1862, just before the Civil War. Do you now see the power of total freedom? Our greatest power is to focus the mind on one thing for an extended period of time. Albert Einstein. I think, therefore I am. This is a classic question about our existence. But what kind of existence do we have if we don't think? Unfortunately, in most of our existence, we do not really think. Thinking is hard to do, and that is why so few do it. When we let others make decisions for us, we lose our power and our control. We are eventually controlled by others who do think. Most paths towards financial freedom are gone. The stock market, the housing market, and small businesses are collapsing. The job market is the worst since the Great Depression. Entire industries and professions are being wiped away. Life savings and equity are gone just when you need it the most. We are under a tremendous amount of stress, mental, financial, political, emotional, and even spiritual stress. We know that this is not the life we are meant to have, and yet it seems that there is no way out. Every inch of your body is telling you something is really wrong. Every way out seems to bring us right back to where we started, trapped. As a country, we are economically bankrupt, intellectually bankrupt, morally bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt. Our families are broken, our politicians are deaf, our companies are corrupted, our military overstretched, our budgets are blown out, our manufacturing is gutted, our borders are wide open, and nothing seems to turn back the tide. Our world is changing. Our jobs, our money, our government, even our fellow citizens. A paradigm shift in everything you know is happening right now. This paradigm shift happens once in a lifetime. The last time we had a paradigm shift was during the 1920s. The 1920s was known as the Roaring Twenties for its amount of technological innovation and incredible wealth that was produced. During the 20s, we saw the rise of the automobile, highways, power stations, air travel, movies, radio, telephone, and even indoor plumbing. But what soon followed after that was the Great Depression of the 30s and World War II. Now more than ever, people are starting to see that things that cannot go on forever won't. We cannot go into debt forever. Debt is rising on all levels of our life. Federal, trade, state, local, personal, corporate, student, mortgage, credit card, automotive debt is at all-time highs. We cannot have 100 trillion of unfunded liabilities. We cannot keep 0% interest rates and print money without destroying the dollar. We cannot continue to have rising health, food, and fuel costs. We cannot have endless, senseless wars and over 700 American military bases overseas. We cannot have 85 million baby boomers retiring at the same time to start taking from the generational Ponzi scheme. We cannot have manufacturing shipped overseas, 20% plus unemployment, and 45 million people on food stamps. We cannot have wide open borders with 25 million illegal immigrants. We cannot have half of Americans obese and 27 million Americans on antidepressants. We cannot continue to have banker bailouts, high-frequency trading, or flash crashes. We cannot have just-in-time delivery that only allows 3 days worth of food and 7 days worth of fuel. We cannot continue having failing schools indoctrinating our kids. We are living at a unique period in human history, and all things that cannot go on forever won't. This period will end, and it will result in an unimaginable upheaval in every aspect of your lives. In fact, I'm willing to bet that if you're here right now, it already has. The bad news is, it is unfortunately going to get much worse before it gets any better. The good news is that you are here today, and it is not too late to become aware of the big picture and start preparing to thrive and not just survive. Things that cannot go on forever won't. It has a mathematically inevitable end. Our debt-based monetary system must create more debt every year in excess of the debt and interest accrued the year before, or it will completely collapse. I will cover this very important fact in much more detail later, but it is essentially we must inflate or die. We are reaching a mathematical end of this paradigm, which will either end in a hyperinflationary depression or an outright default. I have a very good idea on how this will play out and what to do about it, but for now let's concentrate on the fact that it cannot go on forever. The irresistible force paradox asks what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Our way of life is dependent on the absolute necessity of creating more debt every year, and it is an unstoppable force that drives humanity. The immovable object is the natural limit to the world. There's only a certain amount of resources that all this money can chase after. There is also a limit to the amount of wealth the top 0.1% can accumulate without tipping the world into revolution. There is also a limit to the amount of lies people will believe to keep the system going. The immovable object, in short, is reality. You can ignore reality, but you cannot ignore the consequences of reality. Ayn Rand. The dollar collapse will be the single largest event in human history. This will be the first event that will touch every single living person in the world. All of human activity is controlled by money, and no money has been so prevalent than the dollar. Our wealth, our work, our food, our government, even our relationships are affected by money. No money in human history has had as much reach as the dollar. It is the de facto world currency. All other currency collapses will pale in comparison to this big one. All the other currency crises have been regional, and there have been other currencies for people to grasp onto during the crisis. This collapse will be global, and it will bring down not only the dollar, but all other fiat currencies, as they fundamentally are no different. With the collapse of currencies, it will lead to the collapse of all paper assets. Paradigms are like operating systems for societies. They are a set of rules and principles that we all collectively operate under. Our current paradigm operates under the ability to create unlimited amount of money and debt, which funds the world's largest military empire, which provides a forceful peace upon the world and protects all trade. This allows corporations to harvest the world's resources cheaply. It provides for cheap energy and the ability to exploit the world's labor, which leads to massive paper profits, leading to more debt money to be created. This cycle reinforces itself until it eats itself. When the paradigm exhausts itself, those that are in control of the paradigm will violently defend the status quo. Those that do not benefit from the current order will seek to create a new paradigm. The paradigm shift is the result of these two forces colliding. This paradigm shift will affect every aspect of your life: your relationships, your finances, your health, your security, even your faith. This paradigm shift is a natural cycle throughout history. All societies have seasons where they are born, grow, mature, and die. It is as predictable as the seasons of spring, summer, fall, and winter, or even our own birth, growth, maturity, and eventual death. There is nothing scary about it, as it is inevitable and it is natural. Each societal season lasts about 20 years. Every 80 years, our society goes through this life cycle. We began our current winter cycle on September 11th, 2001, and it will not be over until the end of this decade. 80 years before this winter of society, we faced another life or death struggle known as the Great Depression and World War II. 80 years before that, we faced the Civil War. 80 years before that, we faced the Revolutionary War. Once again, we will face a massive paradigm shift, and nowhere is it written that the United States will go on. Our only choice is to first be aware and then prepare for this reality. Our current paradigm was created by those men and women who are now long gone. Their sacrifice and dedication made it possible for the United States to become the world's lone superpower. Almost 40% of the economy had something to do with agriculture back then. Now it is less than 3%. Back then, people could farm on their own gardens, raise their own livestock, and take care of themselves. Now we rely upon corporate food, and the food that we get has no nutritional value. Back then, people knew what real wealth was. They had gold and silver in their money. Now we think the digits in our brokerage account is wealth. Back then, people had a strong family and community support systems to help them. Multi-generational housing was very common. Now we live little lives of narcissism. Our families have been split up and divided and conquered. Back then, people had strong spiritual strength. Now we have chemically induced denial. Back then, people were of fit body and strong mind. Now we're obese and willfully ignorant. Back then, people had a classical education to help them figure things out. Now we have to wait for answers. Back then, people had a real economy. Now all we have is a consumer debt economy. Back then, people did physical activity for fun. Now we have entertainment that turns our minds and our bodies into mush. Let's take a few seconds to look at some of the faces of the Great Depression. Look at the faces of these people and ask yourself, do you think that if given a chance to do something different than the path they chose before the Great Depression, they would? Do you think that these people were aware and prepared for a collapse? Do you think that they had the mental or physical assets in place to deal with this new paradigm? Do you think that you are better than these Americans? If you think it's hard to hear your child cry when they don't get their way, wait until they can't get food. If you think it's hard to get a job in this economy, wait until there is no economy. Can you imagine strapping all your family's wealth into a car and then traveling across country with the hopes of actually finding a job? Right now, the average American is actually worth less than a Bangladeshi peasant. The reason why is because that peasant does not have trillions of dollars worth of debt tied around their necks. They may be poor, but they're not in debt. The very real world coming takes a lot of effort and patience to succeed, and that is something that our society is in short supply of. While tent cities are popping up here and there, the real crippling of poverty is just getting started. The generation that made it through the Great Depression would often say, "We didn't have much, but we had each other." This stands in stark contrast to today, where we have so much, but no one to share it with. We can survive anything together, but when the average American family has been divided and conquered, we have very little hope. The generational support system has been ripped from our human experience, and it is a key of getting back on our feet. Emotionally tough people can make it through anything. They can move on and adapt. But emotionally weak people break because they've never been challenged. Those that have been bred to thrive in a collectivist paradigm, to do as they're told and not ask questions, will be left destitute when there is no one to tell them what to do as the paradigm collapses. Only those with the power of critical thinking will be able to adapt to this new reality. Physical poverty is one thing, but mental poverty is quite another. Everything you know is probably dependent upon this paradigm. Ask yourself this question: what real value do you have to a post-dollar collapse environment? How many men sacrificed time with those that mattered, chasing after an illusion that failed them the moment they reached for it? Think about all those things that we worked so hard for, and how quickly they can become worthless when the paradigm collapses. McMansions and Ponzi scheme retirements are the real dream, while now the only dream that they have is about the real relationships and opportunities long gone. Men will be split from their families as they seek opportunities far and wide, and women will have to endure not only their world falling apart, but trying desperately to shield their children from a harsh new reality. How many mothers do you think are going to sit and regret that they did not prepare themselves or their children for a collapse? How many wish that they had not wasted their time and energy and money chasing after things that mean nothing? After all, how important is fashion, soap opera, and reality TV? Perhaps the most famous picture of the Great Depression was of Florence Owens Thompson, taken by Dorothea Lange. Dorothea Lange wrote in her notes from the 10-minute photo shoot, 7 hungry children. The father is a native Californian, destitute in pea pickers' camp because of their failure of the early pea crop. These people had just sold their tires to buy food. I did not ask her name or her history. She had told me her age, and that she was 32 years old. She said that they'd been living on frozen vegetables from the surrounding fields and the birds the children killed. Those that did not see this coming won't know what to do when it gets here. Jim Poplava. Let's look at the differences in the paths to success for the generation that overcame the Great Depression and what we have now. Back then, hard work, honesty, and reputation were the paths to success. Now, for the most part, it's about speculation, the scam, the quick buck. Back then, having a large, supportive family system was a way of getting ahead in the world. Now, it is about avoiding marriage and children, for they become a burden. Back then, it was what you know. Now, it is who you know. Back then, it took innovation to get ahead. Now, it takes marketing. Back then, we built factories. Now, we offshore those factories. Back then, it was all about running a tight ship. Now, it's all about bailouts. Back then, when people invested, they invested with equity and had partnerships and cared about the outcome of the investor. Now, it is about debt. Perhaps the biggest difference between the two generations is that the generation that made it through the Great Depression believed in delayed gratification and sacrifice. Now, all we have is instant gratification. We have been collectively bought off and silenced with our lifestyle. We buy now and we pay later. Our lives are about daily distractions, our work, sports, soap operas, elections, celebrity gossip, fashion, personal dramas, etc. After this paradigm shift, there will be no American middle class. When the music stops, that is where you and your family will be for the better part of your life, either at the top or at the bottom. For the most part, most Americans will be taken completely by surprise. They will go through shock, anger, resentment, depression, and eventually, poverty. Only a small few will be ready, They will be educated and prepared and ready to thrive. It is said that men go mad in herds and only come to their senses slowly and one by one. Charles Mackay. Most people do one of two things when they start thinking about a paradigm shift. Some dismiss it out of hand and say that it can't or won't happen, and blissfully go on completely unaware. Others that start to think about it become like deer in headlights, unable to process all the possibilities of that reality. The reality is that the majority of the people who do consume this knowledge will not do so until after the collapse. This project is really made for them. I believe that understanding the collapse from those that predicted it is far better than following the Pied Pipers that blindly led us into this catastrophe. Those that did not see this coming should have no say in what to do after it happens. This project is an intellectual assault on the paradigm we now live in, and it also provides an intellectual foundation for a truly free paradigm. I want to be absolutely clear, there is no fixing this paradigm. In fact, it needs to die of its own cancerous excesses. In order for humanity to move on and mature, there must be no doubt of the total failure of this society that's based off of spreading debt and death. This project will make you aware of exactly how we came to this collapse, the men who created, perpetuated, and profited off of this paradigm, the ideologies that restrained humanity, and what exactly we can do to prepare for the collapse and also to rebuild a new society after the collapse. We will see an era of tremendous upheaval, after which we will have either a new Dark Ages led by fear or a new Renaissance where humanity will be free to become its highest and best self. In short, this paradigm can either be something to fear or something to prepare for. So what does it take to be ready? The answer is very simple. You have to have an open mind. Fear of the unknown is always worse than the reality that we face. Think about the scariest horror movie you've ever seen. The first time you watched that movie, you weren't necessarily afraid of the blood, the screaming, the axe murder. What you were afraid of was the unknown. Not knowing when they were going to jump out of the closet, not knowing what was going to happen next. But even the most scariest horror movie, when you watch it the second time, it becomes less scary because you know what's going to happen. And what if we went a little bit further and then we actually watched the behind the scenes and how the movie was made?
Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
What if you could see the actor that was playing the bad guy
Welcome to prime time, bitch.
having fun with the director?
To get out. That's why you shouldn't be hauling ass in that lane. It's very dangerous.
And that all the blood that you saw was all just fake corn syrup, and that the mask that you were afraid of was just a rubber mask, or that the set that gave you such fear was actually a backlot studio. You might actually learn so much about that movie that the next time you see it, you can actually laugh at what once scared you. Well, think about what's going on now. The horror story is the end of this paradigm, the dollar collapse, the end of the world as you know it. And yet the only reason why you're really afraid of it is because you don't know what's going to happen. I can tell you, the more you study it, the less fearful you'll become of it. The more you can prepare for it, the further ahead of the curve you can get, the better chance of success that you're going to have. And that once you get through this knowledge and understand how it happened, why it happened, and where it's going to end, you can actually start looking forward to a new paradigm. We are constantly fed the exception and never the norm. When we are encouraged to play the lottery, we're told about the one winner and not the millions of losers. When we're encouraged to buy insurance, we're always told about the young father who left his 2 children behind, but not the millions of fathers that lived every day. When the government wants to scare us and manipulate us, they tell us horror stories of mushroom clouds and men in caves with box cutters. These scary stories are told to us like we are children, only so that we run to our rulers to protect us. The reality is, these scary stories are nothing compared to the freedoms we give up. Those that would give up essential liberty to purchase temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety. I intend to take the fear out of our future so that we can make mature decisions about what we need to do to become totally free. I prefer dangerous freedom to peaceful slavery, Thomas Jefferson. This project is based off of a very simple principle that I came up with. When you are aware, you can prepare. I believe that when you see the big picture and understand how you are manipulated, finding the best path for you becomes very simple. You cannot become aware unless you rebel against everything that you are now. It starts with simply putting your foot down and saying no more. You must commit yourself that you will no longer be played the fool for somebody else. You will start by doing what is best for you and the ones you love. You will search for truth, wherever it is, and let that search be your guiding light. That simple little rebellion of your mind is just a spark for a much greater fire of enlightenment. You will be reborn a man or a woman that is totally aware, completely free, and fully alive. One thing I like to use is something called a decision matrix. A decision matrix is a tool to help people understand two possibilities and how best to prepare for it. In this case, we're talking about the collapse of the dollar and the paradigm that it supports. In the first scenario, if nothing happens and the paradigm continues and the person does exactly what they've been doing, life will continue as is, slipping further down the chain every year. This paradigm does not benefit those that just blindly go along with the system. If nothing happens, the dollar doesn't collapse, and you are aware and prepared, you will learn to view the world as it is, and you will be able to be in the right place at the right time. Those that are contrarian investors have profited tremendously even though the dollar paradigm has still continued. The next scenario is, what if it happens? What if the dollar does collapse? What does the world look like then? Well, if you're not prepared, you are most likely going to be historical roadkill. Those that did not see this coming will be totally unprepared for the world that is about to come upon them. If you are aware and prepared, and it does happen, not only will you be able to survive, but thrive. You'll be able to create generational wealth, not only in terms of real assets, but also the most important asset of all, being able to think and staying ahead of the curve. Now let's put some percentages to this decision matrix. What do you feel the chances are that it happens? In my mind, throughout all my experience and all my education, I know that it is 100% mathematically inevitable. Even if you only believe that it's a 1% chance that this could happen, you still put your seatbelt on every time you get in the car, don't you? The same kind of dramatic impact you would have in a car accident is the same kind of dramatic impact society and the world is going to have when the dollar collapses. Your ability to question and think and get ahead of the curve is your seatbelt. It's going to save you from tremendous amount of stress and pain. The worst thing I could think happening is being able to see it coming and not have done anything about it. I don't know how people are going to live with themselves after that.